Hello, good morning and welcome. Thanks very much for taking time out of your day to join us this morning to have a look at how plant management and fixed assets can be used with inside Evolution MX. The session will be focusing on Evolution MX, although a lot of the functionality is equally applicable to Evolution M for those of you that haven't yet made the transition to Evolution MX. I'll point out anything that is significantly different between the session. Just a bit of housekeeping. We are recording this webinar, so you'll be sent it as a link upon completion of the session. That will be available then for you to watch at your leisure and circulate with any colleagues that may have missed the session today. During the session, there will be an opportunity to use the question and answer panel, which I believe is to the bottom of your screens. Whilst I'll not be able to address the questions necessarily during the session, we will follow them up on a one-to-one basis. And anything that you see today or you don't see today that you'd like to discuss with us further, then we're happy to entertain that on a one-to-one basis. So whether it's revisiting the content of what we're covering today in more detail, or whether there's other areas that maybe spark your interest that you maybe want to look at it with us, we're happy to do that. So Evolution MX is where we'll start. This is the interface that you'll see that allows you access to the full Evolution MX system. What we're going to be focusing on today is going to be the modules of plant and fixed assets, starting off with the plant module. Now, this is available for you to use not only for your own internal plant, but also the plant that you hire in from third parties. So both aspects are covered by it. When the module is present within your licensing, you can then grant access to it to the users that require the functionality. And then each of the menu options is controlled on an individual user by user basis as to what they get hold of. So with the plant module present, I'll start off by showing you how you can use it in conjunction with the third party hiring in a plant. So that makes then available within the purchase orders module, the option for plant order processing. Okay, so this is different from dealing with an order through the normal materials side of things. Obviously, you can do that, and a lot of people do that. They will raise a normal materials order for plant, but it means you've got to be quite precise about the length of time that the plant is going to be on hire for, and you may not always know that. So the benefits of having plant hire order is effectively raise an open-ended purchase order, so that if you raise an order and say, right, I need this plant item till the end of March, if the end of March comes and goes and it's still on hire, you don't need to do anything. You just keep the item on hire. With normal materials orders, of course, you'd have to raise supplementary orders or amend the order that was in place in the first place. So it takes away some of that administrative nightmare associated with trying to make normal materials orders fit. So with plant hire orders, the process for entering a new order is going to be broadly similar to what you're used to seeing with inside Evolution M/MX. The default here will be the type on the right-hand side will say it is a plant order. You can still nominate the contract for which the plant items are required. And you'll notice that the order number is given a different prefix to clearly identify it as being separate from your materials order. Auto will grab the next number, and that would usually share the same numbering sequence as that applied to material and subcontractor orders, although it could be separate if you desire so. The main screen here then is going to be the same as what you're seeing with ask me to raise the order, and I can then select who the supplier is that I want to place the order with using the normal search, browse, selection side of things. So let's pick up a hire company. And down at the bottom then, we can access the product library. So it's the same idea in terms of a product library that you're used to seeing with a normal purchase ordering. It's just that the products that you will access will largely be those that have been defined for hire purposes. I say largely because that's not going to be exclusively so. There are going to be occasions when alongside the hiring in of an item, you're also going to want to order consumables, spare blades, drills, lubricants, and that sort of thing. So you can add normal products, for want of a better word, to a purchase order that's for plant hire. It'll just recognize by virtue of what the product is as to whether it needs to treat it for hire. So down at the bottom, if I go into the product, I can then access everything that I've got. I'm just going to narrow it down and bring up the products that I've defined for hiring in purposes. And these could either be specifics, they could be more generic headings. We can work with a product price list import as well. So if you get those products from Speedy or other hire companies, then you can format an Excel import to bring in those products and set them up for the first time against that supplier, or to refresh the prices and give a price update. So I'm just going to choose one of those products that we've got there. Now you'll notice that the bottom half of the screen is quite different from what you're used to seeing with a normal materials order. So it's now saying, right, you're ordering in a generator, or maybe more than one generator. So the number of items gives you the opportunity to say there are multiple items. I'm going to say there's 3 items, and dependent on how that product is set up will depend on whether it's going to treat those as 3 separate lines or whether it's going to group them together. So things like fence panels and barriers and whatnot, you might raise an order for 200. You don't want to see 200 separate lines on a purchase order. They're going to be treated together en masse as a block of 200. On and off hire a different amount than the full quantity that was put onto the order. With this situation, I haven't pooled those items, so putting in a quantity of 3 is going to say there's 3 generators, and it's going to allow me to on and off hire them separately. The charging basis has been set up within the product on a daily basis, so that's not the number of days, that's the number of items that we're talking about, £25 a day. Over on the right-hand side, we've got an anticipated on-hire, which is defaulting to today's, but you could be doing this order in advance of its requirement and filling in some future date. The actual on-hire, you can fill this in now. If it's something you're doing on a reactive basis, because something's already arrived at site, then you can be filling in the date here. Leaving it empty will give you the opportunity to mark the item on hire as and when it arrives. I'll just save a little bit of processing just by putting in a full stop, which will indicate that's today's date that I want to use. The anticipated off hire gives you an ability to say when are you likely to be finished with it. So I could put that through as the 30th of April, for example, say I'm expecting to have it for just over a month. Maybe put in some sort of hire reference if that's applicable at that point. So saying OK at this point will create me a 3-line purchase order, as I was explaining. Because I haven't pooled those items together, I'm able to deal with them each individually. So they could all arrive on site at the same time and finish at the same time, but they could arrive and depart on different dates. As I say, you can add other products to there, either more hire products to be treated in the same way, or consumable items, which are normal stocked product items. So if I were at that point to say print it, that will either email it or print it off to the supplier. The layout of the document can be modified to suit the purposes of it being a plant order, and you'll be able to use that. That's going out by email, so we're not going to preview of that particular one there, but it will allow you to be able to include the content on there that's relevant to explain to your supplier what you're having and when you're having it for and when you're likely to get it back. Okay, so what it's also done is, as well as sending off that purchase order to the supplier, we've automatically had the system create plant items, albeit temporarily, just as you can keep track of those items within your system. And we'll have a look at where they've been created in a moment. Back to the menu for purchase ordering, just to explain a couple of the other options there. So there's the on-hire option I was talking about. So if you had had a situation where you weren't able to tell the system it was on hire at that time, you've raised the purchase order, and then a day or so later it arrives on site, you've got the option of being able to get that. Let me just get rid of that Adobe, which has come up unnecessarily. So it's on hire, which is indicating to the system that it has actually arrived on site and it now needs to start the charging. Similarly, you've got the off hire. So that would be using a situation where the hire has finished and you just need to mark the item as no longer being on site, and therefore the charging needs to stop. Okay, so that would be done on completion of the hire. Now, what's happened in the system is we've had the creation of those plant items, and we've also got visibility of those items as well. So if we looked at the contract against which I raised that purchase order, the contract number I nominated 0737. There's no costs yet so far applied to this contract because we haven't actually done any charging to it. But you'll notice we've got a plant tab sitting on the contract inquiry, which will give you visibility of the fact that you've got these 3 generators that were on site from the 29th of March, and they've got right over on the far right-hand side, they've got an anticipated return date of the 30th of April. Okay, but as I say, no cost yet because we haven't actually done the charging process, which I'll come to in a moment. Now, more centrally, you've got the creation and visibility of those plant items within the plant register. So going to the plant module itself now and into the maintenance section, we've got the plant item manager. Now, this is going to be a register of all of the items of plant that you own, giving an indication of where they are. So if I just browse on all my products here, we'll be able to see all items. And I've got an indication. Half a dozen or so are hired in items, all the others are owned items. So those that are owned, you'll get a visibility as to where they currently are. So we can see we've got a light fitting there out at contract 1035 and a couple of others are different contracts. The top, though, have been created by the system by virtue of a plant purchase order being raised. So they are temporarily sitting within my plant item manager because they're on hire. As the hire process finishes and completes for those items, they are marked as inactive and they will no longer then appear on your plant item. Okay, so looking at one of our owned items then, the JCB, if I call that up, you've got lots of information you can store alongside this plant item. Over on the right-hand side, we can see there's an indication that we do have a link through to the fixed asset, which we'll be coming to later. So that's linking to an asset record sitting in a different module. Could be the same number, could be different. Doesn't require it to be the same CLIM number necessarily. Now on here, we've got not only vital information about the plant record, but also additional information that you can use to populate alongside the record. So we're in the user-defined section, as the name would suggest, this is for you to tell the system what additional information you want to store against your plant items. And there are 26 fields available to you. With our help, you can label them with whatever headings you want, and you can also make them adhere to the content that you want to put into those fields. In other words, is it going to be a value field? Is it going to be a text field? Is it going to be a date field? Is it going to be a selection of options? Are you going to make it mandatory? So are you going to say that when you set up a plant item, we have to fill in that information? So up to 26 fields you've got available to you, separate from the other ledgers, although other ledgers do have user-defined fields. And these user-defined fields will apply to all plant items, no matter what they are. Separate from the defined questions, which are kind of user-defined fields, but they are restricted to be relevant to the category code that you are using this plant item against. So in this case, my JCB excavators. So there can be more relevant things that are only pertinent to items in that particular category. And this can save you a lot of time and trouble having separate databases and other manual records of information because you're recording it all alongside the existing plant items. Also on the system, we've got the documents. So for those of you already using document management, that is equally available to your plant items. So any existing documents that may be there, if there are any, you've then got the option of being able to add other documents to that. So if I just go and grab a random document from my desktop, we can easily just populate that into the document management storage for that particular item. And this could be anything that exists electronically, whether it's a PDF or a photograph, an operating manual, a Word document. It could be literally any electronic file, something that Evolution MX itself has not had anything to do with the creation of. Okay, also on the plant items, we've got the summary tab, which will be giving you an indication of the costs that have been directly attributed to the plant item by virtue of a purchase invoicing through traditional Evolution M. We'll also see added to that depreciation charges, which are going to be coming from the fixed assets module. Over on the right-hand side, you've got the revenue. So we are charging this item out to our contracts, so there's going to be a cost associated with those contracts, but we're also going to get an internal revenue recognition of the fact it's basically earned us money internally, saving us the time and trouble of having to hire it in from an external party. So that revenue, that summary screen gives you a good up-to-date view of what's going on. Another tab there is the events, which will show you historically and currently what's happening or has happened with this particular plant item. So we can see historically there was an issue to contract 1030 that completed. My on hire to 0737 is still active. So I could at the bottom use one of the options there to say that's been returned to bring it back into my yard stock effectively. So when is it returned? I can put in today's date just to record that, and it comes back into the main plant yard. So that now will make it available for use with others, and will also tell the system that the charging needs to stop as of today, because that's the period up to which we'd said it was available on that contract. So that's doing things on a one-to-one basis. The other options at the bottom, obviously, to issue it out to site. Mark it as unavailable because it's been repaired or it's damaged or whatever it may be, and it can't therefore be used, and it will show us unavailable on the listing. So people aren't going to be able to inadvertently use it and take it out to a contract. So that's doing it on a one-to-one basis, where you're going into the plant item, you're saying, right, this plant item is moving from this contract back to the yard, or from the yard to out to contract. You've got another alternative option for being able to do that for multiple items going to the same contract, and also to have the preparation of a proof of delivery document. So that would allow us to do that. So let's go and bring the screen back up. Through this time on the plant module, we've got the posting section. We can go into plant hire order entry issues. Now that's going to allow us to nominate the contract that we're issuing it to. So browse for or enter the contract. There may be a customer associated with that. An added benefit of this is that you could actually be plant to an external party and subsequently invoice or bill the client for that. So that's the purpose of the customer coming up there. I'm not going to use it for that purposes. We can look at that separately if that's going to be of any interest to you, but the facility is there to be able to generate invoicing based on external hiring out. The date that the plant needs to happen on. So we can be putting in something either that's current, or maybe putting in something for a future date. Let's put in, what would we say, 30th, I think it's tomorrow, isn't it? Ref 1, Ref 2, just to keep the system happy and give you some idea of the who's collected it, delivery notes and that sort of thing. So OK is now going to allow us down towards the bottom, add items to this plant hire order. And that's going to search for the items using your plant item register, very similar to what we saw earlier. So we could pick up, for example, that JCB, which is now available because it was returned from its previous hire, indicating when's it going to be issued, the charging basis, the anticipated return. So if we're only going to have it for a couple of days, then we can put that in as an indication. As and when it comes back, you can see you've got the option of being able to fill in the return date. So that will then tell the system to stop the charging. But you can, as I say, add in multiple items here, all in the same go. So we've got an extension lead, for example, as well. Let's put that in and say that's going to stay on site for the same length of time. Okay, so that's the preparation of the plant hire order. Saying OK to it. We'll then make it available to be printed. You've obviously got the amend option should that need to be used as well. But this can give you a useful proof of delivery document that can be sent out and maybe get a signature. So it's showing you everything that you've prepared and not yet printed, dispatch it, maybe in draft mode or as actual, just to give you an indication as to what it's going to show as. And that, as I say, could receive a signature. Keep the paperwork up to date, and you could drag and drop that if you wanted to against the plant item. Okay, so that's our plant side of things in terms of issuing and returning and managing the plant items. To get the charging to happen, we'll use through the postings menu the period charge option. Now that is going to look at everything that is either hired in from a third party, hired out to a third party, or just on site at one of your own contracts. So asking you to do the charge up to the selected date. So let's move it forward to, say, the end of the month. You can do this daily, you can do it weekly, you can do it monthly, you can do it as often as you wish. It'll always look at the items that are on hire up to the date that you specify for maybe the range of categories. So you don't have to charge everything at the same time. And even if you select all categories, you will then get a browse list, which will allow you to say which ones you're going to actually charge. So they're all ticked by default. It's going to be picking up from the last charge date that you used and saying this is the charge that I'm going to apply. So we'll see in there a couple of entries that we've got for the new stuff that we've just done, the light extension and the JCB. The process will then create the postings and the costings to the plant items in terms of internal revenue, and also to the contracts in terms of cost. It's also going to create the all-important GRNs, or goods received notes, that are relevant to be able to match the purchase ledger invoice for the hire of the product against. So as a result of that, we've now done all the costings. What's quite interesting about this process is that even though I've done the charging up to the 31st of March, you then may get an indication from a site manager, for example, to say, oh no, that went back 2 days ago. So, okay, I've already charged it. So if you put it off hire or mark it as returned earlier than the last charge date, when you next repeat the period charging, the system will automatically pick up on those dates that are charged for and shouldn't have done, and do a reverse charge for you. So you can then use that as an automatic credit against the invoice, or just the cost on the contract. Okay, so that's the charging has happened. As I say, the costing will then appear on the contract. We looked at that. We could go through the contract inquiry. Call up the job that I was using throughout. The costs then will show all of the costs. And if I just look at the most recent ones, we'll see that there's period charges have come through for the various plant items. So automatically hitting the contract based upon the on and off hire dates you've done and the frequency of the period charge that you do. Now, within the plant module itself, we have reporting capabilities. So if we look at probably the most important plant report that you're going to be interested in, the hire report allows you to, using traditional reporting mechanisms, say what it is that we're looking at that's on hire currently. So I could, if I wanted to, only include the items that are on hire. So if I say that, yes, that's going to not be worried about stuff, but if you wanted to look back at everything that has been on hire and is subsequently changed or completed during the time period, you could do that. So if I just say yes to that, that's a very straightforward report. Say it's straightforward, but it's going to be something that is allowing you to have access to your own source of information. So rather than it be the supplier's third-party hire report, then it'll be something that you can have yourself. All important to be able to do that charging. Report generator could be used as well. This, for those of you that may use it on the contract or the nominal side, could be used to allow for your own style of reporting. So I'm just using this to pick up on due dates, for example. This uses Excel. So the result of the report will be sent out to Excel, containing the information that you've asked it to include. So it could be showing you the total costs and revenue on each individual plant item. It could be picking up on those user-defined or defined questions, giving you nice reminders about when service dates are due or hydraulic tests or whatever they may be. As I say, that's for you to use flexibly to pick and choose the fields that you want to have included on the report. For those of you that are already using Evolution MX, then you of course have the added advantage of analytics to be used in conjunction with plant. If I click on the plant module, I can see I've got a dashboard. So this would allow me to have a summary of financial information about plant or whereabouts or reminders, for example. So my tile there, which I've got plant on site by contract, could be an alternative way of doing that on hire report, where I'm looking and seeing, well, what have I actually got that's out and about and where is it? So that's going to look through all of my activity and say, okay, at contract 0737, you've got these 4 or 5 items, contract 1035 and so forth. And I've chosen to group that information by the contract. I could do it by date or period if I wanted to, and I can pick and choose exactly what I have included on that particular report. So this is analytics showing the flexibility of it. It's not just restricted to plant module. I'm not going to time looking at analytics specifically. We do have a separate webinar session which we can forward to the recording of should you be interested in, or we can show it you in more detail should you wish. But basically analytics can be brought together under dashboards showing you various different reports. I've got a reminder there as well. So top left is saying I've got 7 items of plant that are overdue. Based upon those anticipated return dates, the system is checking those, and I set a ruling on there to say pick up and highlight those that have already gone past that date. So rather than having to chase them separately, you can get a dashboard which reminds you continually of the circumstance that you may want to address. Okay, from the analytics menu, I've got basically the background to these individual tiles. So this is allowing you to define exactly what is going to be included within the plant items option I've got there. That's just an alternative to be able to list your plant item manager, basically, which is showing you each and every one of the items that you've got. If we wanted to, we could drill down on the details beneath. So on is currently out on contract 0737. I could from there go directly into the plant events list. So it negates the need to necessarily go in through Plant Item Manager. You're using a more interactive report, which you can do so within analytics. So that's plant in the sense of it being dealt with from a hiring in basis, potentially also a hiring out basis, but also for your owned plant. So that allows you to manage your plant with inside Evolution MX. The fixed assets module sitting with inside Evolution MX allows you to manage assets largely for the purposes of depreciation. Now, this can be used in conjunction with your plant module, but doesn't necessarily have to be. So they can be run as two separate entities. The fixed assets module will look at the assets that you've got set up, some of which may be plant items, but not exclusively so. So going into the asset manager, we'll be able to list and see all of the items that we've got classed as fixed assets. The coding that's been given here, I've taken the opportunity to use automatic coding, which may not be your preference. So based upon the category or type of asset you've got, I've just said give it the next sequential number. But if you prefer, you can keep your asset numbers your own. And that may be more logical if you are using the plant module to be able to input the same reference that you've used on the plant module. But the two ledgers are separate. They are separate records, and they are managing them separately, although there is integration. Excuse me. So within my plant register, I've got my JCB model. We can see information about it in terms as to its status. So it's capitalized and is therefore starting to, or is accumulating depreciation, as opposed to something being not yet ready to start the depreciation, or something that's been sold or discarded. The method or type of depreciation is being shown there. So you've got choices as to how that might operate, whether or not it's going to use any residual value that you've recorded. So you can put a residual value against it, but not necessarily use it in the calculation of the depreciation, depending on your choice of options you've got there. Okay. Also on the asset record, we've got the analysis. This is going to show you how it interacts with the nominal ledger in terms of making the financial entries for the depreciation charge and cumulative depreciation, as well as the profit and loss on sale of an asset. And also at the bottom, you can see I've got an indication that this fixed asset is linked to the plant item that we looked at separately a few moments ago. So the same item under a different reference sits in within the plant module. And that will allow us to take the charge of depreciation and post it over as a cost to the plant item. The summary will be giving you an overview as to what's happened so far on the on the fixed asset item. So the capitalized cost, its value, how much is so far depreciated, and its current net book value. It'll be updated by the system. Similar to what we saw with plant items, we've got the user defined, which can store any other. So that could be configured by us to include renewal dates, calibration test dates, insurance certificate dates, anything at all that you you want to record. Blank as it is now, it could be populated with up to 26 fields of information. Also, down at the bottom, we've got the document button, which could be used to store any documentation against the fixed asset, whether that's an insurance certificate, a proof of purchase, operating instructions, manuals, or whatever it may be. You can drag and drop those in against the fixed asset item. Now, assets can be manually added to the register, or you can do an asset take on from an Excel file. So if you're currently running your assets on an Excel basis, then we can look at formulating a suitable version of that to be importing your assets to get you going in the first place. Now, the depreciation of the assets is taken care of within the module. We've got the depreciation menu, which will allow us to either actually depreciate and calculate the depreciation, or just preview might be doing. So if I use the preview selection at this point and say we're going to depreciate to the 29th of March, it will then give an indication as to which assets are going to be depreciated and to which value. Now, if you don't want to do anything more than that, you have the option of just cancelling out. So just giving you a preview to say that's what it's going to do. Using that same option, whether or not you had chosen the preview, it would either show you the contents of what it's about to do, and then just hitting the OK button is telling the system to go off and do the calculation and the posting. Okay, so that's as quick and easy as that to actually post the depreciation through to the nominal, and where relevant, update the plant items also. In addition to that, you've got the reporting mechanism within inside the fixed assets that allows you to do the depreciation calculation, show you what's already happened in terms of depreciation, but also be able to forecast it. So you could be taking the option there to say, right, I want to see what the depreciation is going to be between now and the end of the year. So it's a useful report to be able to show you what's either already happened or what is going to happen ahead of it necessarily kicking in and being posted. Now, as I say, we've got integration with the plant module. So if we were to return to the plant register on the maintenance section, have a look at my plant item manager that we were looking at earlier with the costs associated, browse for it, select it from the list, and we'll then see that we've got the summary tab will include a line for the depreciation. So that is as a result of the depreciation calculation of fixed assets is come through and showing in an appropriate heading. The costs will also allow you to see any occurrences of the posting. So on multiple occasions, it would have made multiple postings for each month or each period of depreciation required. So that in a nutshell is your fixed assets ledger, sitting with inside Evolution MX and integrating with. So that's the end of today's session, really. I hope you like what you've seen today. It's given you something of interest. If you need any more information, then please do respond to the follow-up email that our marketing team will be sending out. We'd be interested in any feedback from today's session and interested in talking to you further about any other requirements you may have. So I'd like to thank you for your attention and wish you a very good day. Thanks very much. Bye now.